My name is Rebecca Strasser, and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College. I'm a sixth grade special education teacher in the Clear Creek Amana School District. My study was on testing the effects of co-taught classroom on academic achievements of sixth grade special education students. The problem statement is that students come to the middle school with levels low in math foundational skills, whether they're special education students or not. There are demands given to be put on just one teacher, and in order to split those demands, the intervention that is being proposed in this study is co-teaching. According to Conderman's study in 2011, when providing a co-teaching model, it allows responsibilities to be split among multiple teachers. This study will use the mathematic area of the iReady diagnostic assessment and the IO assessments to determine the progress the students have made. I decided to do this study on co-teaching because as a special education teacher, it affects my students every day. I wanted to know if my presence with planning and delivering instruction will help them understand the mathematic concepts better than if I wasn't part of the plan. Co-teaching usually consists of a general education teacher and a special education teacher in the classroom delivering the instruction. There are different models of co-teaching that were used in this study. One of them was the one teach, one observe, and that is where one teacher is up front delivering the instruction where the other teacher is observing the classroom to look at if there's any behaviors in the classroom or if there are any others that are struggling with the concept as the one teacher is teaching the whole class. There's station teaching, where the students go through rotation, different stations, and teachers might be included in one of the rotations, but both teachers are teaching during this time. There's parallel teaching, which is when both teachers are teaching the exact same lesson at the same time to two different groups. And then there's team teaching where both teachers are teaching. They might go back and forth with each other while delivering the instruction. It's not just one teacher delivering the instruction. How does co-teaching help with students with disabilities? When the No Child Left Behind Act was passed in 2001, it allows that all students have access to the general education curriculum within the general education classroom. Students with individualized education plans or IEPs have access to be educated in the least restrictive environment, which is the idea of inclusion. According to Nichols and Sheffield, inclusion is based on that all humans have the right to participation, access, and achievement. Instruction is merged between the general education students and the special education students as much as possible. Co-teaching allows students of all abilities to be given the opportunity to have access to the general education curriculum within the general education classroom. Whereas before, special education students would receive their instruction in a pull-out setting, so they were not given that access to that grade level material, but instead at their level. So they were not given that access to the general education classroom. There are benefits of co-teaching. Both teachers share their different areas of expertise. As a special education teacher, I do have more training to work with students with disabilities than the general education teacher. whereas the general education teacher might have more training in the curriculum or in the subject area that is being taught with each other. So both teachers can help fill in those gaps with each other. So that is a benefit for co-teaching. There's multiple studies done on co-teaching, such as Walsh, which proved that students in a co-taught atmosphere had a 10% increase on standardized assessments. The same study also showed that co-taught atmosphere increased reading proficiency by 11% and 14.5% in math, whereas when it wasn't a co-taught atmosphere, proficiency was only increased by 1% in reading, and there was no change in math. The gap in this study, in this research, is most studies have been done in the elementary setting. Not very many have been done in the middle school setting or even with special education students. Hypothesis, students in a co-taught classroom will show greater increase on the Iowa assessments and the iReady diagnostic assessments. The independent variable is the co-taught classroom. The dependent variable is standardized assessments, such as the Iowa assessments and the iReady diagnostic assessments. This is an A-B independent t-test. The impact from this study would be that more special education teachers be more involved with the classroom when it comes to planning, instructing, and assessing students, which then leads to co-teaching in other subject areas. This study was only done in math, so hopefully more subject areas would want to co-teach, whether that is for a whole school year, for a unit, or for a day. When both teachers are involved with planning, it also impacts how to differentiate in the classroom. It is a little bit harder to do that when you don't co-teach, when you're not both involved in the planning and instruction. The methods, I did work with 6th grade students. No incentive was given. We were given permission by the principal to do a co-teaching class period in math. The experimental group had 27 participants. 5 of those participants were students with individualized education plans that had math goals written in them. The control group was 26 participants. 5 of them had individualized education plans, but not math goals. The procedure, the general education teacher and the special education teacher will have common planning time so that teachers can create lessons based off the Common Core standards in the area of math. And we had 20 essential standards that were touched in this study at some point, whether that be a review or in a unit that we actually taught. The special education teacher did not have planning time with the control group. It was the role that the special education teacher was not to be pulled from the co-taught classroom unless the student behavior required them to. This was done 80 minutes daily. For each standard in the experimental group, the participants would take a pre-assessment and given a checklist. The checklist was a scaffold based on their pre-assessment of the students. In the control group, the students were given a whole group direct instruction. Everyone in the class received instruction the same way, whereas in experimental group, it was scaffold differentiated to meet the needs of the students. The participants took 2 assessments during this study, and The first assessment was the iReady Diagnostic Assessment, and they take that 3 times a year during the fall, winter, and spring. iReady is a computer-based program created for the Common Core standards grades kindergarten through 12th grade. The participants also took the Iowa assessments during the spring. The Iowa assessments are timed. All special education students were given their time and a half according to their IEP. The iReady diagnostic is untimed, so students could take as much time as they needed to for that assessment. As you can see, the hypothesis is confirmed, but it's not significantly to have an effect on this study. By using the alpha level of 0.05, you can see from the chart that the p-values are greater than the alpha level. So then that means that the intervention was not effective. This is showing the final iReady and Iowa assessments for each co-teaching and non-co-teaching. You can also see over here under the experimental group, the fall mean was 484.9 and the spring was 507. That is a difference of 22 points, so the students had an average growth of 22. On Iowa assessments, they had an average growth of 9.9 points. In the controlled group, they had an average growth of 17.5 points on the iReady, and then on the Iowa assessments, they had a average growth of 8.4 points. Overall, the experimental group, which is the co-taught atmosphere, grew 4.5 points more than the controlled group on iReady and 1.5 points on the Iowa assessments. The implications for this study is that both teachers share their different areas of expertise, so they can kind of fill in the gaps with each other. With that common planning time, they can do that. They can scaffold the assignments and the assessments. And then Vygotsky's zone approximate development also provides that they can alter the learning environment to help with student learning. During this study, student engagement wasn't tested, but it was observed throughout classwork. And in Siegart's and Landrum's study, it stated that 46% of the students are engaged more with more than one adult, whereas 41% of the students were engaged with only one adult. So it shows that with more students or more teachers involved with co-teaching, with planning and stuff, then you're going to have more student engagement. Limitations for this study was the assessments. Were the iReady and the Iowa assessments the best assessment to take? And then also the time frame. Should we look at a longer period time frame? Recommendations would be to find a new kind of assessment other than iReady that doesn't test over the long period of time, or Iowa assessments over a 1-year time. The time of year that the assessments were given, the final assessments were given at the end of the year, which is usually the case for any end of the year deals. And then how long the study took. So should we look at more than just a small window of time, or should we look over a period like a year or 2 years with this group? These are my references, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation and you learned something new about co-teaching.